Falun Gong in Malaysia, A Quiet Presence in a Delicate Geopolitical Landscape, by Aslan Adnan, M.A. Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, is a spiritual movement rooted in Chinese traditions of meditation, moral cultivation, and Qigong. Founded in 1992 by Li Hongji, it centers on three core principles: truthfulness, Zhen, Jan, compassion, Shan, and forbearance, Yuan, and quickly gained millions of followers in China before facing a sweeping government crackdown in 1999. Since then, the movement has expanded internationally, including to Southeast Asia. In Malaysia, Falun Gong has maintained a low-profile but persistent presence, navigating a complex interplay of civil liberties, ethnic identity, and foreign policy sensitivities. Early introduction and local practice. Falun Gong was introduced to Malaysia in the late 1990s, primarily through Chinese-speaking practitioners from China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. It found early support within the ethnic Chinese community in urban centers such as Kuala Lumpur, Penang, Johor Bahru, and Ipoh. Adherents gathered in public parks to practice the movement's 5 exercises, 4 standing and 1 sitting meditation, and to study Li Hongji's principal text, Zhuan Falun. Despite its growth in neighboring Taiwan and parts of the West, Falun Gong's reach in Malaysia has remained modest. The movement faced early challenges, including language barriers, limited public familiarity, and a socio-cultural environment dominated by Islam and diverse established religions. Nevertheless, a small core of practitioners has sustained interest through workshops, informal study groups, and occasional public exercise demonstrations. State response and diplomatic balancing. Malaysia has never officially banned Falun Gong, but its approach has been quietly cautious, shaped in part by the country's deepening economic and diplomatic ties with the People's Republic of China. Since the onset of Beijing's campaign to suppress Falun Gong in 1999, Chinese diplomatic missions have been active in pressing other governments to curtail the group's activities. In Malaysia, this has translated into occasional but discreet acts of restriction. In the early 2000s, there were unconfirmed but credible reports of pressure on local authorities to curtail Falun Gong-linked events, remove promotional materials from public exhibitions, and discourage practitioners from assembling near Chinese diplomatic premises. Although these incidents have not escalated into outright bans or prosecutions, they reveal a persistent undercurrent of state wariness, often exercised through unofficial channels. Yet, Malaysia's civil space, though limited, has not entirely closed off Falun Gong. Practitioners continue to gather, meditate, and share their beliefs in small groups, particularly when such activities are framed around health and wellness rather than political dissent. Cultural identity and religious boundaries. The movement's Malaysian adherents are predominantly ethnic Chinese, many of whom see Falun Gong as aligned with traditional values and a form of moral self-cultivation. However, Malaysia's religious pluralism, governed by a state-centric interpretation of Islam and institutional frameworks that regulate religious expression, has restricted Falun Gong's ability to gain broader public traction. Unlike in the West, where Falun Gong often presents itself as a persecuted faith with an active human rights dimension, its Malaysian identity has remained subdued, largely avoiding overt political activism. In part, this reflects cultural sensitivities and the desire of local practitioners to avoid conflict or state scrutiny. Quiet resilience. Though its footprint remains limited, Falun Gong's endurance in Malaysia speaks to the resilience of minority spiritual movements, navigating both domestic and international constraints. Without formal organization, temples, or paid clergy, the movement survives through informal networks of volunteers and grassroots initiative. While it has neither drawn large followings nor significant state repression in Malaysia, Falun Gong remains emblematic of the delicate balancing act many transnational spiritual movements must perform in Southeast Asia, caught between individual freedoms, ethno-religious boundaries, and the shadow of China's growing global influence. Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, is a modern spiritual movement combining traditional Chinese Qigong practices with a moral philosophy rooted in the principles of truthfulness, Zhen, compassion, Shen, Shan, and forbearance, Zhen, Ren. It was founded in China in 1992 by Li Hongzhi, who compiled and popularized the system, claiming it to be a high-level cultivation method that improves moral character and physical health. Part Origins and Beliefs. Falun Gong is grounded in ancient Chinese traditions, particularly Buddhist and Taoist cosmology, but Li Hongzhi framed it as a practice distinct from religion, with no temples, formal membership, or rituals. Its core texts include Zhuan Falun, which elaborates on its metaphysical teachings, and supplementary writings by Li. Practitioners engage in meditative exercises and strive to live by the 3 core virtues mentioned above, believing spiritual elevation can lead to enlightenment. Li also presents controversial cosmological ideas, such as the existence of multiple dimensions and extraterrestrial life, and opposes modern scientific materialism, homosexuality, and mixed-race heritage, the latter especially criticized in scholarly and human rights circles as discriminatory. In the 1990s, Falun Gong grew rapidly, amassing millions of practitioners across China. Its popularity and independent organization alarmed the Chinese Communist Party, CCP. After a silent mass demonstration in Beijing on the 25th of April 1999 near Zhongnanhai, where over 10,000 practitioners gathered to appeal for recognition and an end to harassment, the CCP under Jiang Zemin labeled Falun Gong a heretical organization and launched a massive crackdown. From July 1999 onwards, the 610 office, SNAR, was established to oversee the suppression. Reports of arbitrary arrests, forced labor, torture, and deaths in custody have been documented by Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and UN rapporteurs. Perhaps the most controversial accusation is that of organ harvesting from imprisoned Falun Gong practitioners, a charge which has been supported by independent investigations, e.g. by David Matas and David Kilgore, but remains disputed by the Chinese state. Global spread and political advocacy. Since being banned in China, Falun Gong has shifted its center of activity abroad. Li Hongzhi resides in the United States, where the movement has flourished. It maintains numerous media and cultural arms, notably the Epoch Times, a newspaper often critical of the CCP and associated with right-wing politics in the U.S. New Tang Dynasty Television, NTTV, offering Mandarin and English language programming. Shenyun Performing Arts, a touring dance company that promotes Falun Gong themes through Chinese classical dance. While Falun Gong presents itself as apolitical, its media operations and human rights campaigns are clearly aligned against the Chinese government. Critics have accused its media of promoting conspiracy theories and aligning with far-right narratives, particularly in the U.S. context. Controversies and perspectives. Falun Gong is seen by its adherents as a path to moral and physical renewal. However, Chinese authorities classify it as a cult and allege it has led to social harm. Academics and human rights organizations are divided. Some view Falun Gong as a new religious movement, unjustly persecuted. Others point to opaque leadership, controversial dogma, and its political activism. Conclusion. Falun Gong remains one of the most controversial and politically sensitive spiritual movements to emerge from post-Mao China. It represents a unique intersection of Qigong revivalism, spiritual practice, global human rights advocacy, and ideological confrontation with the Chinese Communist Party.